Hi, friends. Welcome to Embracing Your Season. I'm your host, Paige Klingenfield. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am at the AACC National Conference in Dallas, Texas. A wonderful guest is joining me on my show today. Her name is Dr. Sharon May. Dr. May is an author and speaker and holds a PhD in marriage and family therapy, as well as a master's degree in theology from Fuller Graduate School of Theology. She is the founder and president of Safe Haven Relationship Counseling Center. Amongst many more accomplishments, Dr. May is the author of 2 books, Safe Haven Marriage and How to Argue So Your Spouse Will Listen, which PS is on now my Amazon list because I would love for my spouse to listen when we argue because I'm obviously always right. All right, kidding aside, Dr. May is amazing and she serves faithfully on the executive board of the American Association of Christian Counselors. Now, make sure you stay tuned to after the show for my takeaways from this interview. Let's get started with my conversation now with Dr. Sharon May on this edition of Embracing Your Season. Welcome, guys. We are at the AACC conference in Dallas. And of course, I have amazing opportunity to speak with so many great therapists and ministers across the world. Well, today I have Dr. Sharon, and she is going to talk to us a little bit more about marriages and how we can help our marriages to be healthy and successful. And so, Sharon, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here and to be able to share what's a passion of my heart with your audience.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about your background and your family and how you've arrived to where you're at today professionally.
Yes, well, today I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I work with couples, and so my job is usually sitting in the room with couples arguing.
Which is fun, I'm sure.
Yes, and I use the intensive approach, which means couples come to me for about 3 days. They usually come when they're at the end of the runway. They're saying we're disconnected, we're not getting along, and we're not sure if we should be together, this isn't working, and so they're depleted, stressed, distressed, and they're looking for hope. They're looking to say, is it possible? Can we find our way back to each other and create a marriage where we can get along, start enjoying each other, and finish life as partners, as a team? And so I love my work, and I've always been interested in what draws us to someone. Why do we fall in love with someone? And the patterns and the cycles that keep us connected and loving well, and then the patterns and cycles that keep us, at odds with each other, arguing and fighting, saying, I don't think I like this, being in this relationship with you. So I've always had an interest. And then my dad, Dr. Archibald Hart, has also been in the field and has been a great encourager to me in my work.
So pointing out what you just said about how you love having the conversations of pointing out to the couples what brought them together. Do you use that in some of your practices of getting them to reconnect with one another?
Absolutely. But the idea of marriage is not getting that perfect couch or the perfect car, and we want to keep it perfectly, clean and in new condition. Marriage is about we both bring 2 boxes of car parts and we put together this relationship. But there are some basic things that drew us to our spouse at the beginning. Like maybe the man says, my wife was like a sunflower. She was just outgoing and could talk and light up a room. Or the wife says, my husband was just an oak, was solid and predictable. But as life goes on, they discovered that her being a sunflower meant she would talk all the time. And she finished his sentences. And that he's an introvert and he doesn't dialogue externally, and she's like, he's a lump on the log and I can't get him interested. And so what drew us together, those wonderful qualities, gets lost in the midst of life.
Yes. I've been married 18 years and, just life happens. I have 4 kids and, full-time job, doing all the fun things. And it is hard sometimes to reminisce about when we would have date nights consistently and enjoy one another. And so just even probably taking that moment and saying, what is it that I appreciate? Just being intentional of looking at my husband and say, how do we have a healthy relationship with one another in such a beautiful way,
Yes.
but we don't often think about because we're just going through the rhythms.
Absolutely. And that is so well said. I tell couples, remember that you are each other's safe haven. You're each other's harbor that you sail out of the chaos of life to come home to. And you're each other's, you've got a lily pad that each of you are trying to get on to at the end of the day. And when you've got kids running around or teenagers that you're trying to stay involved with their, evolving, exploding life. Yes, you only have sometimes 10 minutes or half an hour each day, or you have to wait till the weekend. But when you have those connecting moments, look at your spouse and say, you are my safe haven, aren't you? There was a reason I chose you. I do love you. I do want to grow old with you. I want to make life good for you. And actually, you want a happy life with me. I mean, when I realized that, I remember my husband and I had a season where we were just arguing and fighting. And one day he looked at me and said, I just want to know how to love you well. And I want a good life with you.
Wow, yeah.
And I was
Powerful.
like, what? I thought you were just always negative and critical and like, no, you do want a happy life. Like, you are my safe haven. So on my phone, under my contacts, my husband, I have his name as Mike, love of my life. So every time he calls me, what I get on my phone is, Mike, you're the love of my life. I've got to remember that.
Wow.
Even when I'm busy or mad at him or too stressed. Yeah, you are my safe haven. You're the love of my life. And sometimes just 1 minute of thinking of that can just calm the storms and reconnect.
Yeah, I think it's a shift in our paradigm, right?
Yes.
Is that many times we
Yes.
try to just do life, we're just trying to survive, but when we have that moment of intentionality that we are on the same team, we are here together to support one another, that shapes the way that we interact with one another.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can be mad at my husband or my wife. I cannot like them in the moment, which is
That's
normal.
allowed. Yep,
But bottom line is, I do love them. I want this marriage to work and I want to grow old with them. So how can I right now just appreciate, value, and have that moment of connection?
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
So you have a wealth of experience working with couples. So what would you say is maybe the most common thing that is dysfunctional in marriages? Or what about that season of dysfunction are you seeing the most of?
First, I want to say all couples get stuck in difficult seasons. And so if you are in a difficult season in your marriage, seek help and stick it through, because all couples are going to go through difficult seasons. Every couple's going to feel like, why are we married? I don't want to be doing this anymore. That is just the nature of being married. Two imperfect human beings coming together, trying to carve out a safe haven together. And two people actually very different. We have differences of opinions, different views, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. Even though we might like the same things, we all like certain movies or music, we have differences in our way of being. And it's when those differences take on a meaning, that becomes to mean you're not my safe haven. You're not there for me. You don't consider me. I'm not valuable to you or important to you. That's when the alarms sound in a relationship. And then we come to reevaluate. Does he really care about me? Is she really my helpmate? Does she have my back? And it's those issues that start dividing a couple. Like, for example, chores. Couples argue about chores.
They do. Yes.
Don't they? When to do it?
Absolutely.
How
it's
to do it?
Battlefield, yeah.
And how quickly to do it.
Yep, that's right.
From what's the best way to pack a dishwasher.
Why is that a thing, by the way? It is. It's reality.
It is. And it's like, no, you're supposed to pack the dishes, all facing backwards or sideways, or do you put the knives and forks down or up? Those things trigger in us alarms that say, but I like the forks down. And how many times do I have to tell you? if you really love me,
there
you
it
put
is.
the forks down, but you don't. But if your sister or your mother asked you to put the forks down, then you would do it.
Yes, that's so odd how we listen to other people but our own spouse.
Yes.
That's so odd.
And then the meaning gets put on the event. You did it that way. You didn't do it. You didn't take the trash out immediately. You didn't pack the dishwasher right. You didn't fold the towels in a particular way. How many times do I have to tell you? If I have to tell you, you don't love me. So it's the meaning that gets put on those events that come to mean you're not my safe haven. And we are wired to react when we feel like our spouse isn't there for us. I'm going to guard myself, or I'm going to protect myself, or I'm going to protest what is going on. Hey, how come you left your mug 6 inches from the sink, which is only 1 foot from the dishwasher?
Right. Legitimate question.
Yes. And if you left your mug there, that means I'm not your maid. You're not thinking of me. And we put it in terms of, are you my safe haven? Are you there for me? And when those alarms start going off, you're doing that because you don't love me or care for me or value me, or I'm not important. And then I up the ante and I protest and get prickly, or and I get an attitude. And then the spouse goes, whoa, you have an attitude. What's going on? What's the matter? Nothing. Like, oh, now I know your nothing means it's something. Now,
That's right.
Now the spouse is walking on eggshells, kind of withdraws. And one then is withdrawing not to trigger the other spouse's anger. And the other spouse is angry, but all they want is the other spouse to come and, repair it, and they don't. Now you get into a pursue-withdraw cycle. To try and manage it. And when couples don't recognize it, they then think that the cycle is how their marriage is. You don't care about me. You're always mad at me. Nothing I do is good enough. You're always critical of me. I can never please you. And now those meanings become like, is this the real conclusion about our marriage? And couples then can be blinded and stay in that despair of, we always argue, you're always critical to me, well, that's because you don't do anything to show you love me, and I try so hard, but it's never good enough. And couples stay arguing like that. And couples can stay arguing for between 4 and 7 years before they get help.
Wow. Goodness.
And that's a long time to feel
It really is.
unloved, like you don't care about me. And that's a long time to feel guarded in your marriage and to feel lonely.
And I feel like during that time as well that they would gain all of, I call it a filter, right? So everything my spouse does is filtered through the lens of he's no longer my safe haven, as you've said. So how much work do we have to go through to heal some of that? I'm sure that's probably what you do in your practice.
Oh, absolutely. And if we can get couples understanding these concepts early on, that's why my counseling center is Safe Haven Relationship Center. And we really try and help pastors and churches and couples to start early. Because when they can recognize their relationship cycle, they can go, oh my goodness, it's our cycle that's doing this. It's not representative of my heart. I really do love you. But I've got an issue that I get triggered when I see the dishes not put in the sink. And it's my issue that I'm sensitive to that. But it becomes to mean you don't love me and care for me. And then when I get critical, you withdraw and shut down. But you withdraw and shut down not because you've stopped loving me or caring for me. You're just guarding and protecting yourselves. When couples can understand their cycles and name it and see it when it's up and running, oh my goodness, that can de-escalate. It can save so many date nights.
Absolutely. How do you get them there, though?
One is, helping couples read, to learn and to both be on the same page. Like, I want to grow my marriage. I want to make this marriage work. I want to learn what our cycle is that keeps us disconnected. And so I have a book called Safe Haven Marriage. I have a book called How to Argue So Your Spouse Will Listen, to help couples understand their argument cycle. And then to try and get to the heart of, what am I really wanting you to understand in the middle of me flailing or sulking? What is my hurt and my need? What do I really want you to understand? And be able to have that compassion or understanding, or to risk to be vulnerable enough to listen to each other. I know you're shutting down and sulking, but I know that that's not what you really want to be doing, because it keeps us disconnected. It makes me mad that you're sulking, and I know you don't like sulking, and what's really going on underneath your sulking, you know? I'm scared, I'm afraid. I don't know how to deal with conflict. When you get mad, that scares me. You know, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to please you or calm you, because clearly I'm not doing enough. And then the other spouse being able to step into that and say, no, you know, when I get mad, I need you to step toward me and to say, no, my mug is, you know, a foot from the sink, not because I don't love you and care for you. I'm mindless, or I didn't think about it, or, you know, it doesn't bother me, or, you know, whatever reason. I'm sorry, I'm going to do better at that, so that we can start having deeper conversations beyond just the reactivity. And if you're really stuck as a couple, reach out for help. Find a therapist that works from a model called either Safe Haven, which is my model, or emotion-focused therapy, which Safe Haven is based on, that helps couples get to the heart. What's my cycle? What's really going on? I know I want you to be my safe haven, and I know we're stuck arguing. And what do we really want to have understood in the midst of that? Help is out there. You don't have to stay stuck.
Yes, that's a good word. What about the family or the marriage where it's one partner who sees it and wants to work on it, but the other one maybe not be willing?
Oh, those are such difficult marriages because you feel so alone. And, you know, you then cycle in and out of, I get so angry and mad and I've had enough, to, okay, Lord, give me compassion, you know, and let me love well. And we cycle, you know, back and forth between that. And for those spouses, what I say is, you've got to start with you. And if you only have you to work with, that's where you start. And try and look at yourself as to, well, why do I get so angry? Why is that my immediate reaction to be critical or to take it personally? Or I then have to control the external world. What can I let go of? Let go of the dishwasher. You know, so there's a few dishes that don't get clean because he packs it the other way. Let it go. And try and bring up the deeper issues in a kind way. Let go of the small things. So the towels are not perfect and the bed is not, you know, straight perfectly. Let it go. But talk about what issues really matter, and do it in a kind way. And if you know your spouse takes things personally, watch how you do talk and say, you know, I don't want you to take this personally. I want to watch how I talk to you because I really want you to hear this. You don't have to walk on eggshells because that's not healthy, but talk about it. I don't want to walk on eggshells around you because I trigger you, but I do want to let you know that when you don't call when you're coming late, it triggers me, and that might be my issue. So try and have different conversations, but don't just change verbiage. Really change you, so you have a different understanding of what triggers you and why you react the way you do. so that you can come and have a different conversation.
Well, it just makes me think about how a lot of these things can be deeply rooted and we are unfamiliar with where they're even coming from. But I like to give people wisdom on just following their day. And as you said, what triggers you in those moments. And we know that, for instance, anger is not the primary emotion, as you indicated. There's something so much deeper, but taking that moment to pause and say, what am I really angry about? Gives you definition, gives you words. And when you have those words, you can process, which that's where some of the healing is. But as you stated, like sometimes we can't get there ourselves. So seeking a professional who knows how to get you into that place can be so important, life-giving and marriage saving, which is a beautiful thing.
And that is so well said, well said. And just for, couples or the one spouse listening even to your podcast, where you can listen for those little pieces of wisdom in your growing journey. Because to love well requires us to grow. We've got to be on a journey of looking at ourselves, understanding those deeper dynamics. Why does anger trigger you? Or why do you get angry? Oh, you had an angry dad. And what did it feel like to be on the verge of his anger outburst? It was scary, it was terrifying. And what did you do in response to that? I sunk in. But now as an adult, I don't have to put up with it. So now I yell back. Oh, yes. Right. But at the heart of that, or I still sink and sulk, okay, and now I'm going to yell. But at the heart of all of that, we as human beings, we all want to know how to say things in a way that we can be heard and understood. And we have to know what I'm really feeling and what am I really needing and what do I really want you to hear and understand, so that we can work together as a team. If you can take the trash out before I cook dinner, helps the family go smoother. Because you're right, I get more irritated if I see the trash cans full, or the kids then put stuff in the trash can and it flows over, and the tensions then rise during dinner time. So for us as a team, can you help the team and take the trash out, rather than, if you don't take the trash out, you don't love me and you're a bad man, and it does not help anyone.
Not at all.
Feel like this is our family and we have home and a safe haven. And we're trying to raise these children who drive us crazy and trigger us, and we're trying to raise them into healthy human beings. And we have a helpmate to do it with. So we've got a common goal that we're working towards. Let's start having those deeper conversations that help us move toward that. Instead of, two husband and wife fighting like two kids sitting in the backseat of the car. You're breathing on me. No, I'm not. You're touching me. You're in my space,
It happens.
It does.
Yes, sure
it does. And it can happen in an instant, What are you doing in the kitchen? Stop undermining me with the kids and, stop telling me how to make the spaghetti. And when it's your turn to cook, you can do it. We can do that.
Sounds like you've heard these stories a lot then.
Yes.
A lot of examples.
When we all just want to get along and just to feel loved and cared for. We really do. And holding on to that as a reminder every day.
Wow. So how much of it do you think is modeled by our parents that we witnessed growing up in the way that they had relationships? And then how do we help our kids develop that safe haven as well in their relationships?
Oh, yes. Our kids, what we're modeling to them. There's many ways we come to understanding our emotions and how to react when we feel certain emotions. We do learn that from growing up. So growing up, if mom was emotionally unstable and you didn't know what mood she was in, and so you didn't know if I should just gently say, Mom, I'm hungry, or Mom, I'm scared, or Mom, I'm nervous, do I say gently to Mom, which in a securely attached family that is a safe haven. A child can gently say, Mom can niggle a little bit, Mom, I'm hungry, when's dinner? And the mom can be reassuring and comforting. Now, my child, wait 20 minutes, and if you keep niggling, it's just going to take Mom longer. So here, why don't you color in? So Mom acknowledges what the child is feeling, helps the child self-soothe, helps the child know what to do with that emotion and that unmet need. And the mom and the parent and the child are working together. So that's ideal. But if the parent is saying, oh, stop it, you do that niggling and I'm going to spank you, or you'll go to your room, or, I'll have a chore for you to do. So a child feels that, niggling, well, I don't know what niggling is. I don't know how to assess my emotional feelings and needs. And so an adult, then that child grows up to an adult that gets all mishmashed inside. I know I'm unhappy and I'm comfortable and I'm niggling, but I don't know how to deal with my emotions, never mind find what I need. So we do bring that into our adult relationships. And what worked growing up, I needed to shut down or to be guarded or to be protective, so I wasn't terribly hurt by my parent, doesn't work as an adult. As an adult, I need to learn, what am I feeling? And when I sulk all the time, what's going on for me? When I'm angry and always prickly or resentful, what's going on? That's the protective emotion, as you said. What am I feeling deeper? And what do I need? And how do I share it in a way that my spouse can hear it and then be there for me? And it's complicated because I'm dealing with that and my husband's dealing with that.
Exactly.
And we're just two struggling human beings, trying to unravel. And then being aware, as you said, the model that we are putting out for the kids. Kids need to know that their parents will self-reflect and go, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have reacted that way. Take responsibility and then come back and repair. And that parents will be flexible. I'm teachable even as a parent. You're right. I told you just, knock it off, keep quiet, when actually you were bleeding. I am sorry,
Right, yes.
And you weren't just being a brat. You actually were hungry. I'm sorry. That a child goes, wow, Mom and Dad, I could reach them. They would self-reflect, take responsibility, and come back and repair.
Yeah.
And that Mom and Dad would be flexible, I didn't eat my lunch because there were ants all over my sandwich at, lunch. Okay, I'm flexible. Then here, eat this apple while I finish dinner, versus rigid. No, you will have nothing until dinner's made. That when a child knows, Mom is workable or Dad's workable. I know the boundaries. And I know discipline's going to happen because Mom wants me to learn and they're molding and shaping me.
Yeah, that's good.
But Mom and Dad are reachable, flexible, and we can repair when they do something that wasn't nice and I do something. And when we have that repairability, I tell you, that covers a multitude of sins because we are all going to fall short.
Absolutely.
As parents, right? The best of us. The best of us. And we need to know, Lord, is there a way to go back and repair?
Amen to that. Grace is so good.
Oh, grace is so good. So when we're lying in bed at night going, oh, I yelled too much. I did not discipline because I didn't want to deal with it. I just let them have the iPad. Maybe his sister did start the argument. We can review everything as we're lying in bed. Knowing, Lord, I can go back in the morning and repair is everything, right?
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
And speaking about forgiveness, too, how transformational that can be in marriage relationships. Have you seen that in your research and experience?
Oh, yes. Us as human beings, we all want to be loved and cared for. And at the heart of us, we might be terrified and scared of repairing a hurt because we're scared of, if I forgive my husband, will he do that again? If I don't punish him enough, Is he really over that, pornography issue or whatever happened? And it's scary to think of risking to be vulnerable to forgive, because we're opening up our hearts again to our wife or to our husband to say, if I stay vulnerable with you, you have the potential of hurting me again. But I always say you can trust repair attempts, that forgiving process between you and your spouse, when your spouse says, I see what I do, and I don't like that part of me. You're right. I do use that business tone of voice, or I can get critical, and I see that, and I want to change that. I want to grow and become everything God has for me to be, and I'm working on it. Can you have grace for me? And when we truly trust that our spouse does want to grow, we can then risk to trust. I'm sorry. I am sorry, you're right. My ADD, I do squirrel every night and I don't take the trash out. But I'm working on it. Well, how are you working on it? Well, I got a life coach. I went into counseling. I'm reading a book. I'm actively doing something because I know the squirrel, I go from, I'm walking to take the trash out, and then suddenly I see the shoes and I take them to the washroom. Then I see the wash needs to be put in the dryer and I'm all distracted. And then the trash is there and family night, is chaotic. I want to do that better, and I'm doing something about it. When we can really trust that our spouse wants to grow and they don't want to hurt us, they do want a good life with us, we can then risk to receive those repair attempts and get back on track.
And that's so tangible, right?
Yes.
They're not going to minimize what they're doing. They're explaining,
Right.
but they're also owning that they need to be held accountable and they're going to
Yes.
change.
Yes.
Such a good
Yes.
word. And then I love your statement of then they can risk to trust.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
So I would love for people to get your information and resources. Where can they find that?
Thank you. Yes. Our website is safehavenrelationshipcenter.com. And they will find information about our marriage intensives. We also have a monthly group for married couples where each week we send you one of these concepts for you to learn and an exercise to do between you and your spouse or you on your own. And then a group conversation via Zoom where we and other couples can talk about, okay, this is real stuff. That you didn't order me water with no ice at a restaurant, and that ruined our whole date night is a big deal. I'm so glad there's other couples who are also...
Right, we're all in the same boat here.
We're all in the same boat. But what should I really be fighting for and about?
Right.
And we discover that, in community. And also for our marriage intensives, couples come for 3-4 days. You don't have to stay stuck. There is help out there, and either come to us or we do it via Zoom, or we can put you in touch with other people who have resources to help you grow. So that's safehavenrelationshipcenter.com.
I love that. You do not have to stay stuck. There
Yes.
is hope. Wow. We will leave it at that. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I had fun with my conversation with Dr. Sharon May. I hope that you appreciated her wisdom and you got some takeaways for yourself. I know one of my biggest takeaways, and something that I just don't think of often in the chaotic world of being married over 18 years, is thinking there is a reason I chose my husband. Think about that. So you are just in a hot mess of reality. You have kids running around screaming. You have work, whether inside or outside the home. Life is chaotic, and your husband comes home from work and he just adds to the confusion. That can make things a lot more tense for us, right? But when we take a moment and we pause and we remind ourselves that my spouse is my partner. We are in this together. We are raising kids. We are trying to bring glory to the Lord in this world through our work. We are truly of partnership. Using the line of I chose him for a reason can help reset the paradigm of my perspective of my spouse. Truly, it sets the stage for having maybe more patience, or my interactions are more fluid and smooth, because it reminds me that we're in this together. So maybe that could be something you guys practice this week, is there was a reason I chose you. Take a pause and a moment. Think of those reasons. And how fun would it be if you actually start sharing with them again the reasons you fell in love with them? And maybe it wasn't even the beginning. I know that I have come to love my husband even more throughout the years, through the trials, just seeing his resilience, seeing the way that he loves my children so well. It's just such a beautiful thing that I get to share with him. And that actually adds connectedness to our marriage relationships. And that ultimately is a beautiful thing. Another takeaway that I have is I loved when she was talking about, again, going back to the things that our spouses do that can drive us crazy. Too often we associate the action with their motivation. We fill in the blanks. That's what we do. We have a filter. We've spent years sometimes with our spouses, and we think that their behavior is dominated by selfishness. Now, of course, sometimes it is, surely, but many times it's because they're distracted or they're not aware or they're not even in clue or in tune with our needs. When we take a step back and instead of putting meaning behind their actions or the event, we get to look at what is truly going on behind the scenes. Usually, this helps us be a little more curious, maybe even asking questions. Help me understand why you chose to do that over this. Now, this can be as little as Dr. Sharon May pointed out, like leaving the glass beside the sink instead of putting it in the dishwasher. Or this can be some of the bigger stuff and like in the middle of a conversation or a tense dialogue. You get to lean in and ask, what is the true motivation? What are you truly experiencing right now? So I can fully understand. So that allows me to empathize or have grace so that I don't go straight to defensiveness or make assumptions, which ultimately can lead to some more tension and conflict. And then finally, I love when she talks about building trust back. We know that we have infractions every day with our spouse. Honestly, if you don't, I would love to have you on the show because I don't know how people can live without having infractions or conflict in their marriage. It's because we're two fallible people. We live in a real world that causes tension. So when we make a mistake, how can we build back trust with our spouse? Which talks a little bit about modeling self-awareness. When, for instance, we point out the fact that our spouse is maybe agitated or annoyed with us, we can own what we have done that made them slightly annoyed. And again, we're not going to dictate value to the circumstance. For instance, like if we, again, leave the glass out on the counter, that might not seem like a big thing. However, when it's stacked on many multiple circumstances that add annoyance to our day to day, that can infer that our spouses don't care about us, that don't respect us. That changes the filter in the way that we view our spouse's behavior. So instead, when we notice how maybe our spouse is slightly annoyed, they do an eye roll, which is usually my go-to. I don't even know I'm doing it half the time. Luckily, my husband likes to point it out so that he can address it with me. I'm able to say, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. That was not what I meant. That's not what I intended to imply, how I felt about you. Instead, can you forgive me? And can we move through this? I also like to say, what do you need from me? Or how can I support you in this? So in addition to maybe doing some of the little things, because I know that that would love him or serve him well, I also get to ask about maybe the emotional needs that he has that he potentially can't even articulate because we are just trying to navigate the chaotic world that we live in. As I continue to model the self-awareness, own what I need to own, and seek how I can support him, that with consistency builds trust. And then when the trust is starting to be built, then our spouses can risk being vulnerable more with us. And that's ultimately what we need in relationships is that vulnerability and authenticity so we can navigate this crazy world together as partners. So friends, those are some of my takeaways today from my conversation with Dr. Sharon May. You may have had some takeaways. I would love to hear from you. What have you learned from this session and this conversation? You can always email me at paigeklingenpeel@gmail.com. We have tons of exciting interviews coming up, so be sure to tune in again next time for another edition of Embracing Your Season.